Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our book club. Looks like people are just slowly coming in. Okay, great, great. Well, I hope you're having a good weekend. These 2 weeks pass very quickly every time, don't they? Um, okay, well, let's jump right into it. I'm going to share my screen with you so we can see what we'll be doing tonight. Okay, so today we're looking at pages 36 to 51, right? And I'd like to just do a quick review of the story, just to highlight so far. And then I will read pages 36 to 51. Please read along with me. And after that, uh, like every time, I'll talk about the text and other aspects of the story. And after that, please feel free to ask any questions you might have. And then finally, we'll look ahead to the next session. That's on June 25th, where we'll read pages 52 to 65. That's the end of part 1 of the book, actually, okay? I know there are many more pages after that, but that's the end of part 1, okay? All right, so I will stop the share, and there I am once again. Okay, so a quick recap of the story. So How I Lost My Ear, right? It is a story being told by the narrator, Grandpa Gristle. So this grandfather is telling a story to his grandkids about how he lost one of his ears. Now, this is actually a rather long story, of course, that he's telling his grandkids. And the main character of the story he's telling is a boy named Ben, Benjamin Boyd. But Benjamin Boyd has a nickname because everyone in this small country town has a nickname. It's a long tradition in this town, Booney Point. And Ben's nickname is Butterfingers, and he doesn't like that nickname, even though it's true, I suppose. He's a clumsy boy, and that's how he is described by this nickname. Okay, Butterfingers is someone who's dropping things, is clumsy, and that does describe Ben. But Ben wants a new nickname. Okay, he wants a better nickname, something that people will respect, even admire. And he thinks that if he joins the marching band, the Marching Moose, which is the state champion marching band, that maybe he can get a new nickname. That's what he's hoping. And so, even though he's not a good musician, right? He found a set of bongos, a pair of bongos in the window of the music shop. And he wants these bongos because he thinks the sound of the bongos is so beautiful that even if he's not a good musician, if he plays these bongos, then maybe he has a chance to get into the marching band. And the tryouts for the marching band, they need some new members, are in just a few weeks. But when he returned to the music shop, he didn't see the bongos there, right? They disappeared. And he thought, well, now I'm going to have to use my father's old bongos. I won't be able to get these special giant heart bongos. But as it turns out, his parents got the bongos for him as a special surprise, a special gift for his birthday. Okay, so that's where we are. And his grandma told him that he has to go pick her crab apples. And so that's where he's going now. And so that's where we are. We're on page 36, right? And you can see the picture here that he has his bongos, the new bongos, and he's on his way to Crabapple Cliff. to pick the crab apples for his grandmother. Okay, so I will begin now on page 36. Okay, I'm taking off my glasses so I can see the pages more clearly. Okay, are you with me? Are you ready? Okay, Mayor Olympus. Grandma. Ben continued to growl as he started up dusty Route Z for Crabapple Cliff. He grit his teeth at the thought of other practical jokes his grandmother had played on him over the years, like the time he was settling down in bed to read, but his flashlight wouldn't work. When he unscrewed the bottom to look inside, a frog leaped out and bounced off his forehead. He then made a mess of his room, trying to catch it and put it outside. Or the time he had that dream about treasure beneath the willow tree. Of course, most folks wouldn't start digging up their backyard just because of a dream. But Ben wanted to believe it so badly, he couldn't stop himself from grabbing a shovel. And it was only after he dug a deep hole that Grandma cheerfully confessed she had been whispering in his ear for over an hour while he slept, "Treasure under the willow tree, treasure under the willow tree." Someday, Ben vowed to himself, "I'll get Grandma back. I'll come up with the biggest humdinger of a practical joke yet. Something that will leave her sputtering. No, something that will leave her speechless. She'll stand there, her mouth wide open, but totally mute. No more gabbing, no more whooping, just mute as a mushroom." Ben grinned, picturing his grandmother as a two-legged toadstool. His mood lifted right along with the warm sun climbing in the sky. He didn't know how he would do it, but today he was 12 and he was feeling older and stronger than yesterday. With the picnic basket in his left hand, he began thumping the giant heart bongos with his right. He lifted his knees higher and imagined himself in a marching moose uniform, strutting across Olympus Field. It was a long walk from the Boyd Llama Farm to Crabapple Cliff, but Route Z was too rocky to ride a bicycle, and a car could only make it as far as the edge of Grizzly Woods. From there, the forest had to be hiked to finally reach the cliff. Ben smiled at the sound of the giant heart bongos ringing out across the countryside. The tall sunflowers by his side, growing in long rows, nodded their heads to the rhythm. The gleaming seeds from these sunflowers, the rare supernova variety, were the secret behind the Boyd Llama Farm's generations of state champion llamas. Route Z snaked along the edge of the llama farm. Whenever a car or a truck sped down the dirt road, a cloud of dust swirled in the air. Not many vehicles traveled Route Z, though, so Ben was all alone for the first part of his march to the cliff. As he thumped the bongos, Ben daydreamed about Mayor Olympus. It was a habit from his long walks to school. The story of Mayor Olympus gave him the courage to endure each school day as Butterfingers' boy. Like all human beings, it was hope that kept Ben going. In his case, the hope that one day he would gain a new nickname, as Mayor Olympus once did. Ben had never seen a picture of Mayor Olympus as a child, but he tried hard to imagine what he must have looked like. A small, sickly boy with horrible boils all over his face, his shoulders, his back, his thighs, even his rear end. Angry red boils that oozed with sticky, foul-smelling pus. Pus. That became his nickname. But as Pus grew older, he bloomed, big and strong. The boils disappeared, and the face that emerged was said to be the most handsome in the whole state. What's more, it turned out there was nothing the gifted Pus couldn't do, and do better than anyone for miles around. It got to the point where Mayor Cowlick was heard to exclaim, "That young man, he's like all them Greek gods rolled up into one." And soon after, on the day Pus unseated Mayor Cowlick as mayor of Booney Point at the age of 19, the town dubbed him Olympus. Ben continued marching up Route Z, his right hand thumping away on the giant heart bongos. He was approaching a fork in the road. Route Z curved to the left. Straight ahead was the paved blacktop, Olympus Drive. Olympus Drive was the fastest way into town. This was the way he walked to school each day. It was also the way to Leech Lake. Ben thought happily of the trip he and his father would take that afternoon to go fishing and swimming. But this morning, he followed the bend in the dirt road, the sunflowers nodding their goodbyes. As he came to the fields of goldenrod that waved on both sides, he caught their sweet scent, and his mind drifted on with the story of Mayor Olympus. Ben pictured the new mayor walking through Grizzly Woods all those years ago. It was a fine summer day, and he was searching through the dim forest for rare roots and berries. He was eager to save a deathly ill little girl named Giggles by brewing up a special remedy. Don't you worry, Giggles lived. But in the deepest, darkest part of the forest, he came upon a horrific scene. A huge grizzly bear, claws long as sickles, was mauling at a moose. The moose was on the ground, grunting its last breaths of life. Standing by the big moose's side was a baby moose. The baby was in shock, its spindly legs quivering, its round eyes gaping at Mayor Olympus. But before Mayor Olympus could act, the bear slashed at the baby moose with its claws, raking the flesh from one front leg. Mayor Olympus gave a great shout, and the bear turned. It reared up on its back legs and roared like the devil himself. Then it charged at Mayor Olympus with its fangs bared and its claws held high. Mayor Olympus was a big man, but the grizzly bear was a monster. Still, Mayor Olympus didn't move a muscle. He didn't run. He didn't climb a tree. He didn't drop to the ground like a possum and play dead. He just stood there with his pouch of roots and berries, waiting patiently for the ferocious bear to attack. A heartbeat later, it was towering over him, arms raised high and ready to shred that unblemished skin right off his face. But before the claws could come down, Mayor Olympus dropped the pouch and shot out his hand, jabbing a finger deep into its left armpit. The finger drilled at the bear's optic artery, temporarily pinching off the blood, pumping to its brain. The savage beast instantly collapsed into Mayor Olympus's arms. He set the limp bear gently on the ground. Mayor Olympus rushed over to the baby moose. It was now lying beside its dead mother and whimpering in pain. He ripped his shirt into strips and wrapped the wound on the moose's leg. Then hoisting the bawling creature onto his broad, bare shoulders, its legs dangling down around his neck, he carried it back to town. He fought bravely to save its injured leg, but the wound was too severe. In the end, the leg had to be amputated. After that, the orphaned moose took to hobbling after Mayor Olympus wherever he went. Mayor Olympus named him Norman. Ben pictured the portrait of Mayor Olympus and Norman as he made his way up dusty Route Z. He smiled at the thought of their two big grins. Then he remembered the bone. Legend holds that Norman's leg bone was the inspiration for the marching moose. After amputating Norman's leg, Mayor Olympus gazed at the streak of long white bone shining through the gash made by the grizzly bear's claws. He then cleaned off the flesh, buffed the bone to a pure white sheen, and scratched Norman's name in one end. It would be his baton. Mayor Olympus gathered a group of children from Booney Point, brought them to his new music shop to teach them to play musical instruments, and began leading them in band practice every day after school on the grassy town square across the street. Norman always stood nearby, balanced on three legs, in the very spot where the bronze statue would later be raised. He loved watching Mayor Olympus toss the bone baton high into the air and catch it behind his back. 11 months later, Mayor Olympus and the Marching Moose were crowned the finest youth marching band in the whole state. Though small in numbers back then, they held that title for the next 9 years, becoming the pride of Booney Point. A warm breeze crossed Route Z, now running straight as a cornstalk, but Ben shuddered. It had happened on a day like today, on a quiet summer afternoon during band practice. Just one day after their grinning portrait was taken, Mayor Olympus and Norman, along with all 18 members of the Marching Moose and their instruments, vanished from the face of the earth. The Abernathy Pumpkin Patch. The Boyd Llama Farm had the biggest herd of llamas in the whole state. Whenever something passed by on Route Z, whatever it might be, all 144 curious creatures would stop grazing on the goldenrod and rush to the road. And today, as you know, the llamas were feeling especially itchy. So when Ben finally reached the timber fences, 143 llamas came stampeding up to him on both sides. They stood there straining at the fences, the fluffiest, most colorful llamas around, in shades of ivory, cinnamon, apricot, auburn, chestnut, rust, pearl gray, and charcoal. Their large eyes were round with fear and hope, praying in a llama way that the wonderful thumping sound they heard somehow heralded good news about Henry. Henry was the 144th llama at the Boyd Llama Farm, but he wasn't just one of the herd. He was Henry VIII, the latest and the greatest in a long line of state champion llamas that stretched back to Henry I. Henry VIII was the biggest, most beautiful llama the Boyd Llama Farm had ever had. His coat was a gleaming harvest gold. His limbs and neck were long and regal. His large head, always held like a prince, sported tall, proud ears and cool amber eyes. He had won the blue ribbon at the state fair 6 years in a row, and the next fair was just a month away. But that morning, when Ben's father went to give Henry his platter of roasted and lightly salted sunflower seeds, the prize-winning llama was sprawled out on the hay in his stall. His legs were rigid as iron pipes, and his fine white teeth were clenched in a crazy grimace. He was wheezing a mile a minute through his big nostrils, and his eyes were glazed and gaping helplessly at Ben's father. So Ben's parents frantically hauled him into the trailer and floored the old Rambler pickup truck into town to see Doc Sprinkle. The 143 llamas eyed Ben as they chewed quietly on mouthfuls of goldenrod. Ben marched in place for a moment, then stopped smartly and placed the picnic basket down on the road. I can't dilly-dally, he told the llamas, but I don't think Grandma will starve if I play for you for just a minute. He knew they were worried about Henry, and maybe a short performance on the Giant Heart bongos would help take their mind off their troubles. Now, with both hands, Ben began to play. His drumming was clumsy, but the llamas were hardly music critics, and they quickly fell under the spell of the booming bongos. They stopped chewing and stared in wonder. They started swaying their necks and humming softly with delight. When Grandma was on the road, the llamas were far less charmed. Ben finished his performance with a loud flourish. He bowed to both sides of the road as the llamas snorted for an encore. Then he reached for the picnic basket, catching the scent of the gingerbread cookie. He lifted the lid of the basket and peeked inside the napkin. The big gingerbread boy was trimmed with white icing. Ben grinned at its smiling face. His mouth watered. I'll just eat one leg, he told himself, and I'll save the rest for Crabapple Cliff. He broke off the left leg and popped it into his mouth. Chewing happily on the spicy gingerbread, Ben slapped the lid shut and picked up the basket. Then, thumping the drum again with one hand, he launched into a high-stepping march. He continued up Route Z, a perky yellow butterfly now flitting alongside him. The 143 llamas followed as far as they could, up to the edge of the Boyd Llama Farm. They jostled there at the fences, staring at Ben's back and bleating with worry again. The butterfly hovered there, leaving Ben on his own as he entered the Abernathy pumpkin patch. He hadn't been as far as the Abernathy pumpkin patch in almost a year, not since the last day of summer vacation the year before. Because he always walked Olympus Drive to get to school, he only had to come this way when he picked crab apples for Grandma, and he hadn't been looking forward to it. The sun was glowing warm up ahead, but Ben shivered. His hands fell silent on the drumheads. His heart thumped instead. There weren't any pumpkins in the Abernathy pumpkin patch. The last pumpkins had shriveled on the vine years ago and rotted right in the fields. But everyone still called it that, the Abernathy pumpkin patch. It just goes to show how the people of Booney Point hold fast to a name. The Abernathy pumpkin patch may sound like a small plot of land, but it was a sprawling farm that rolled across Route Z, a gray and barren place like the lonely moon. Ben always got a sad, creepy feeling when he had to tread through it. He tiptoed up the road. His eyes darted from side to side. Nothing moved. A breeze whistled off key through the old vines that still strangled the ground. There was the smell of ruin in the air. It's hard to believe, but the hills of the Abernathy Pumpkin Patch once boasted the grandest pumpkins in the whole state. People near and far would come to cut them off the vine to make jack-o'-lanterns for Halloween. Everyone in town even turned out on Halloween night for the liveliest party around. They wore flashy costumes, jiggled on hayrack rides, bobbed for juicy apples. It was Booney Point's biggest affair of the year. But everything changed when Arnold Abernathy, now known to all as Old Man Fibber, inherited the farm. Ben thought of the story his father had told him about Old Man Fibber. His father said it was all in the old man's head, but Ben couldn't help feeling frightened by the tale and fascinated too. He was trying to picture Old Man Fibber as a boy, hiding behind a leg of the water tower on Olympus Field when he came to the foot of a tall rise in the road. He sucked a breath and puffed his way to the peak. The sight of the crumbling farmhouse and barn below, surrounded by mountains of scrapped machines and metal, like some huge junkyard, was always a small shock. But this time, his whole body froze. His breath caught in his throat. His heart skipped a beat. There, by the road in front of the Abernathy farmhouse, was a towering, dark figure. Old Man Fibber's story. Ben squinted into the sun. He put a hand above his glasses, but saw only a silhouette, tall as a silo. Of course, most small boys with a large imagination, surprised by a gigantic dark figure on the Abernathy Pumpkin Patch, would probably have the good sense to turn tail and run home. And most days, Ben would already have bolted, even though he knew Grandma would give him a tart tongue lashing if he brought back an empty picnic basket. But the story of Old Man Fibber was now stirring in his head. He had to look. He had to see what was looming there by the roadside. Ben took a small step down the long, dusty slope. He paused, squinting and listening. He heard his own heart pounding. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. He took a second step. He paused. Then another step. Another pause. One more step, and suddenly his foot slid in the dust. He was now tumbling head over heels down the hill, the bongos swinging wildly around his neck and clunking him in the chin. He sat up at the bottom, caked in Route Z. He spit the grit from his mouth and glanced up through grimy glasses. He couldn't see anything, but he now heard a sound, a soft, creaky groan. He blew the dust from his glasses and looked back. From this angle, with the figure now blocking the sun, he could see it clearly. It was 50 feet tall, with heavy legs and feet. Its belly was bulging. The thick right arm hung to its knee. The left arm was raised to its face. Its head was huge, its ears big and dangling. The lower jaw jutted from a massive mouth, and the eyes. The right eye was gray and glaring, but the left eye was hidden, covered by the left hand. It was a monster, and it was made of junk. Ben slowly rose from the ground. He edged closer to the junk monster. The groan came again, and he paused, holding his breath. He realized the breeze was justling at the joints, making the metal creak. When he reached the wide shadow falling across the road, he stopped. He studied the rusty figure, how it had been welded together from the scrapped machines and pieces of metal that were heaped in hills around the house and barn. Tractor sides, car doors, truck fenders, bicycles and tricycles, refrigerators, pop bottle machines, stoves, toasters, barbecue grills, bed frames, radiators, ladders, gutters, tin roofing, garbage cans, milking pails, mailboxes, guardrails, street signs, poles and pipes, chicken wire, barbed wire, basketball hoops, hubcaps, dustpans, shovel heads, pitchfork prongs, even a fancy bird cage for an earlobe. Ben stared at the great gray eye fashioned from a steel kitchen sink. It's like Old Man Fibber's story, he whispered with a shiver. Just then he was jarred by a fierce roar, which quickly died away. His eyes goggled behind his glasses. He looked past the junk monster to the old farmhouse where Old Man Fibber lived. The whole house was wilting to one side, and the roof was nearly peeled clean of shingles. The ground around the house was frosted white, like a light snowfall from all the paint that had flaked off the walls. But the house was still. The only sounds were Ben's hard breathing and the soft groaning of the junk monster. Moments later, another roar ripped the air and again died to silence. His eyes flicked beyond the farmhouse. It's coming from the barn. Like the house, the barn looked like it would topple right to the ground if the breeze picked up. The pale red boards were slowly rotting away, leaving gouges and gaps in the wood. Ben peered at a big gash in the side of the barn, but he was too far off to see anything but a black hole. He heard a third roar, louder and longer, but that died away too. Then a gruff voice erupted from inside the barn. His spine went stiff at a burst of muffled cursing. As the rant went on, raw as a slaughterhouse, he also caught the sound of splashing, like something was thrashing about in a bathtub. His ears burning, his heart banging, Ben turned and hurried up Route Z toward Grizzly Woods. Okay, so let's continue then. I'm going to put my glasses back on so now I can see the screen more easily. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to talk a little bit about these pages. Okay, so let me go past here. Okay, so on page 36, paragraph 1, it says, he grit his teeth at the thought of other practical jokes. So Grandma has played these practical jokes on him over the years. So grit your teeth, it's kind of like this, like, so grit your teeth is used when somebody is really angry or frustrated about something. It's also used when you're facing some kind of unpleasant situation. For example, let's say we're going swimming at the swimming pool, but the water is very cold and I don't want to get in. And you tell me, oh, just grit your teeth and jump in. Understand? So grit your teeth can be used for an angry situation. In this case, Ben is angry. Or when you're facing some unpleasant situation and you just have to face it. And grind your teeth is not in the book, but I wanted to distinguish the two. So grind your teeth is often used for example, at night, there are some people like me who grind your teeth like, arr, 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 arr. That's a strange thing, right? Why do we do that? But anyway, it's kind of a common thing to grind your teeth, especially at night. It can be done at other times of the day, I suppose, but it's often connected to the nighttime. Okay, so that's the small difference, or that's the difference between these two. Page 37, paragraph 2. This is a personal element. I talked before about the area of Booney Point is very similar, or it's really based on where my father lived in the countryside in or outside a small town in the state of Missouri. And I said last time that Route Z was actually the name of one of the roads very close to his house. And it's also true that Route Z was very rocky. So it's a dirt road, the real road and the road in the book. It's a dirt road. It has a lot of big rocks. It's very rocky, very dusty. And you really can't ride a bicycle on that kind of road, okay? So that's Route Z. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. Page 38, paragraph 1. The gleaming seeds from the sunflowers, the rare supernova variety. Here, variety means type or kind. So I'm talking about these are the seeds that are given to the llamas to eat, right? And I just wanted to point out, and this is just one example, but again and again in the book, I'm really making up names for things. There is no supernova sunflower. Maybe there is, but I was really just making it up. A supernova is an exploding star. That's what it really is. And in this case, I'm just using it to describe the sunflowers to make them sound really big and bright and special, okay? Okay, so this is an important part because it's about the legend of Booney Point, Mayor Olympus, right? And we find out more about his backstory, okay? And this is about his name, Puss and Olympus. So he began as Puss and he became Olympus. How did that happen, right? Well, he was a small, sickly boy with horrible boils all over his face, his shoulders, his back, his thighs, even his rear end. Rear end is your butt. It's another expression for butt. Boils are like this picture here. They are like bumps under the skin and they stick out, right? So the idea is that Mayor Olympus had all these boils, these bumps all over his body. Angry red boils that oozed with sticky, foul-smelling pus. So pus is the liquid that's inside this, okay? It's that thick, sticky kind of liquid that is inside some kind of infected area on the body. So pus, that became his nickname. That's not a very nice nickname, right? But as he got older, he really changed, right? And then finally, Mayor Cowlick, and cowlick is the kind of hair that sticks up just naturally. especially like some small kids. They have a kind of hair like in this cartoon where the hair sticks up. And that's called a cowlick. It's like a cow licking the hair. That's why it's called a cowlick, okay? So Mayor Cowlick, he probably because of his hair, right? Mayor Cowlick was heard to exclaim, that young man, he's like all them Greek gods rolled up into one. So all them Greek gods, of course, the natural English is all those Greek gods. But in the countryside, a lot of people, they don't really use standard English. They use a kind of non-standard English for the grammar. In this case, it's the grammar, right? So instead of those, they would say them. So this really sounds like a person in the countryside, all them Greek gods. So where I grew up and where my father was living, very close area, a lot of people talk like this, farmers, people who live in the countryside. So it's a kind of dialect, I guess, in the countryside. So he says, all them Greek gods rolled up into one. And soon after, on the day Puss unseated Mayor Cowlick as mayor of Booney Point at the age of 19, the town dubbed him, they gave him the name Olympus. So of course, Puss, Olympus, I mean, it's similar in a way. They both have Puss, but they're very different kinds of nicknames, of course, right? So he went from a very negative nickname to a very positive nickname. And because of that, this is one reason why he is like a hero for the people of Booney Point. And of course, a hero for Ben, because Ben wants to change his nickname. Okay, again, a little bit more about Route Z on page 39, paragraph 1. So this picture here isn't perfect, but it's the right kind of shape. Let me explain. It says Route Z curved to the left, straight ahead was the paved blacktop Olympus Drive. Olympus Drive was the fastest way into town. So in fact, this is exactly like near my father's house when he was living there. The dirt road, Route Z, it starts down here and it curves to the left. And then right here, that's the fork in the road. This part is the blacktop. So this is actually a real road and that goes into town. So this is actually true. And when I was imagining the setting, I was imagining this area that I know very well, okay? So that's what it looks like, and you can imagine it this way because it's coming again and again in the story. Okay, and then page 39, paragraph 2, this is an example of a name, and this is called Leech Lake. It said that it's Ben's birthday, right? And he was excited about going with his father to Leech Lake, where they would go fishing and swimming, but these are leeches. A leech is like a black worm. It sucks blood. So if you get it on your skin, it's going to suck your blood. And so I don't know if you want to go swimming in a lake that has a lot of leeches, but this is Leech Lake, okay? Page 39, paragraph 5, we're talking about the huge grizzly bear. Its claws long as sickles. This is a sickle. It's like a farming tool for cutting down grass and things like that, okay? Okay, page 39, paragraph 7. So the grizzly bear is there and Mayor Olympus, he doesn't run, right? He didn't run, he didn't climb a tree, he didn't drop to the ground like a possum, and play dead. This is a possum, and we don't have possums in Japan, but there are possums in that part of America where my father was living, and I saw possums there in the woods. And so this is a possum. It's like a big, it's really big. It's like a big kind of mouse or rat. And the interesting thing about a possum is when it feels threatened, like a predator or something is coming, it will fall over. If it can't run away or climb a tree, it will play dead. Some animals do that, not many, but this animal does. And it's known for that. That's when we talk about play possum, it means that you are pretending to do something, like in this case, pretending to play dead. Okay, page 41, paragraph. Actually, I should stop. I have a funny story about a possum. I told you I saw possums in the area where my father was living, right? Well, his house was it was really surrounded by the woods, okay? And so there are lots of animals in that area. And he had some cats, and the cats, there were maybe 3 cats, but the cats lived outside, okay? And there was kind of like a porch, and my father had like a little wooden house, some little wooden houses for the cats to stay in, but they would run around and they would go off into the woods and come back. But he had a bowl of food for them that he would put outside, okay? So what happens if there's a bowl of food out there, cat food? Well, other animals will come and they want to eat it. And one day a possum came, and the possum was eating from the bowl. And my father is so funny. He had a gun, but it was like a rifle, but not a real rifle. It was a BB gun, which has like little pellets. So it's not like bullets. It's not going to hurt. It doesn't hurt anything, but it stings if you shoot it, okay? It's like a little ball. And so the funny part is, so he was saying, get out of here, get out of here. And so the possum they're not very fast. And this was kind of a fat possum, and he was just waddling away. He was just kind of walking away slowly, really. And my father got his BB gun. He's trying to shoot it, and he can't shoot it. He can't get it. And the possum isn't running away. He's just kind of slowly walking away. And my father could never hit it. I was there. I was just laughing. I thought it was the funniest thing. So anyway, that's my biggest possum story. And let's continue with this idea about the grizzly bear's attack, because on page 41, paragraph 2, I said the finger, Mayor Olympus, right, drilled at the bear's poptic artery, temporarily pinching off the blood pumping to its brain. Of course, an artery is a real thing. These are like tubes for the blood in the body, okay? Connected to the heart, for example. They're big tubes for the blood. That's an artery. But there is no poptic artery. I just made up that word. I wanted it to sound real, but of course it's a ridiculous situation. He took his finger and stuck it in the bear's armpit, right? But he hit the poptic artery, and then the bear collapsed. So that's the idea here. But again, I was making something up. Page 41, paragraph 4. This goes back to the illustration on page 15, right? So if we go back to page 15, that's the statue, if you remember. And this is the origin of the statue, right? Because he saved the baby moose. Then hoisting means lifting, okay? Hoisting the bawling creature. Bawling is crying loudly. Then hoisting the bawling creature onto his broad, bare shoulders, its legs dangling down around his neck, he carried it back to town. So again, this is the origin of the moose, and that's the statue that we see in the illustration on page 15. Page 41, paragraph 9, this also connects to an earlier illustration, the one on page 9. That's the portrait, right? So on page, we see Mayor Olympus with Norman after Norman has grown, right? And Norman has only 3 legs, and Mayor Olympus is holding the bone. So that's the plot point here. It's about the baton, okay? It's the bone baton. So that will come again later in the story. So this is a plot point. It would be his baton. This is from Norman's leg. And page 42, paragraph 4, the illustration on page 9 again, this is at the end of the chapter. It's an important plot point and it's a cliffhanger. Just one day after their grinning portrait was taken, Mayor Olympus and Norman, along with all 18 members of the Marching Moose and their instruments, vanished from the face of the earth, okay? So they're completely gone. They disappeared completely, and we don't know what happened to them yet. And page 43, paragraph 1, it says the Boyd Llama Farm had the biggest herd of llamas in the whole state. In the whole state, that's part of the book again and again and again, right? So it's a kind of refrain. A refrain is something that's repeated, okay? And so I think even in these 3 chapters, in the whole state is maybe there's 3 or 4 times it talks about that. And even earlier with the bongos, the giant heart bongos are the finest bongos in the whole state. So this is a kind of refrain that I'm using in a fun way to describe various things. Okay, now we're talking about the llamas. Page 43, paragraph 4, he was Henry VIII, the latest and greatest in a long line of state champion llamas that stretched back to Henry I. So of course, Henry VIII was a real person in history, a British king. And the idea, of course, is that the llama is like a king, right? He's bigger and better and stronger and in every way than all the other beautiful llamas. And it's also connected to the fact that the Boyd Llama Farm has had a series of champion llamas going back to Henry I. And this is Henry VIII, okay? But something is wrong with Henry VIII now, right? Earlier, Ben was surprised because Henry VIII was never sick, remember? But something is really wrong with Henry VIII now. And on page 43, paragraph 5, it says he was wheezing a mile a minute through his big nostrils. These are your nostrils, right? The nose holes. And wheezing is a kind of breathing with a whistling sound, okay? And he's wheezing a mile a minute. A mile a minute is an expression that means very fast, okay? So he's breathing very fast and whistling through his nose. In page 46, paragraph 7, it just goes to show how the people of Booney Point hold fast to a name. So it just goes to show. And on page, I'm just checking, page 46, it's talking about the Abernathy pumpkin patch, right? But there are no pumpkins there anymore. And there haven't been any pumpkins for a very long time. But the people never changed the name. So there's 2 expressions here. It just goes to show means that what I just said demonstrates this point or this idea. This idea, in this case, it's about they hold fast to a name. They stick to a name, okay? So it just goes to show is an expression meaning what I just said demonstrates this idea or this point, okay? And hold fast to something means hold tightly to it, stick to it. Okay, we're almost at the end here, just a little bit more, and then we'll open it up to questions. Okay, page 47, paragraph 6. Again, this is an important plot point. He was trying to picture Old Man Fibber as a boy hiding behind a leg of the water tower on Olympus Field. Okay, so we'll learn more about this, but this is an important plot point about Old Man Fibber and actually why he got that nickname. Because originally his name was Arnold Abernathy, right? But he became Old Man Fibber. And what happened? How did that happen? Page 48, paragraph 1, it's talking about the junk monster is tall as a silo. This is a silo. And this is something you see in the country on farms, because a silo is very tall and it holds grain or corn, some kind of crops. They store it in a silo. Page 48, paragraph 2, have the good sense to turn tail and run home. So he sees this junk monster, and the idea is turn tail. It's kind of a country expression that means turn around and run away, okay? Turn around and run away, turn tail. And he knew Grandma would give him a tart tongue lashing. A tongue lashing is scolding. So Grandma would really scold him. It's like loud and severe scolding. And page 48, paragraph 10, the junk monster is 50 feet tall. 50 feet is more than 15 meters, okay? So it's very tall. Page 51, paragraph 6, and again, we have an important plot point. He also caught the sound of splashing, like something was thrashing about in a bathtub. Thrashing is moving in a violent way, okay? So we heard about this bathtub before, didn't we? Because on page 23, Grandma, she's talking about Old Man Fibber, and she said, and now his only friend in the world is that hideous Carl. I hear the two of them even take baths together, okay? So this will come again later. We'll find out more about this too. But this idea that something is in the bathtub, it's connecting now back to page 23 when Grandma is talking about Old Man Fibber. Okay, so these are just a few of the things that I picked out from these 3 chapters, and we're almost at 11 o'clock already, but let's go on. I'm happy to go on. And do you have questions about pages 19 to 35? Oh, that's wrong, sorry, 36 to 51. I didn't change the page number, sorry. 36 to 51, the text or the story. I'll stop the share and let's go to a gallery view. Okay, so if you have questions, feel free to ask them, or I'll open the chat and you can use chat to do that. And feel free. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask? Anything?
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course you will.
Okay, I'm Shige. So now I have 2 questions here, and one is page 36 in the paragraph 3. And so Grandma cheerfully confessed she had been whispering in his ear for over an hour while he slept. So I like this expression, and I have a question.
Yes.
So why did you add the word cheerfully before confessed. So I guess, I guess. So what does it meaning? So if you can, so can you explain? Can you tell me? So why did you put the word in there?
Okay, that's a good question. So we're on page 36, the third paragraph, and it says, Grandma cheerfully confessed she had been whispering in his ear for over an hour while he slept, okay? And Shige is asking about why did she cheerfully confess this? Why is she cheerful? Why did I include that word, right? The reason is she's very proud of her practical jokes, right? So she saw him digging the hole in the backyard and she realized, oh, my practical joke, it worked, right? He's digging this hole in the yard because I was whispering in his ear while he was sleeping. And so she's cheerful because she's happy that her practical joke was very successful and she's proud of her practical jokes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I love her character.
Okay.
And another one, so
Yes.
it's also page 45 and the paragraph, a second paragraph. So when grandma was on the road, the llamas were far less charmed. I guess, so is there any contrast? So when grandma on the road, or so when she wasn't?
Yes, this is a good question. It's actually a plot point. I didn't point it out, but we have a chance to do it right now. So on page 45, the second paragraph, it's where the picture with Ben playing the bongos for the llamas, okay? So in the first paragraph, it talks about the llamas love Ben and the bongos, right? But right after that, it says, when grandma was on the road, the llamas were far less charmed. So this is a plot point because this sentence says that the llamas don't like grandma for some reason, right?
Yeah,
They don't like grandma. So something is going on with the llamas and grandma, and we'll find out later what happens, okay? But this is the first time we learned something about grandma's relationship with the llamas. I mean, early when grandma was first introduced and she talks about Henry VIII, she sounds kind of sarcastic about the llamas. And so I think in the very beginning, we have a sense that grandma doesn't like the llamas or there's some trouble in their relationship. But this makes it very clear that there is some problem between grandma and the llamas.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Okay, good questions. Thank you. Other questions? Anything at all?
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Page is 41.
Page 41.
Yeah, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. Paragraph 5.
Okay.
The mayor in Paris named him Norman.
Yes.
And Norman is, I think, Norman is one of the race, ethnic group, right?
Say that again. Sorry.
Norman is one of the races, I think. It's not.
Why do you say that? Why do you think that?
I think Mayor Olympus named Moose Norman, right?
Right, right.
Him is a Moose, and the Norman is like a human, right? You know,
Yes, yes, yes.
You know why why didn't Mayor Olympus named him Norman?
That's a really good question because I haven't mentioned this yet, but the animals in the story, they all have human names, okay? And so the humans actually have names that are often not human names, you know, because they have nicknames like Butterfingers. Of course, they have real names, Ben, right? But they're often called by nicknames that aren't real names. but all the animal characters, they have human names. And the name, for example, the name Norman, and you'll see as we continue the story, other animals have names like this. Norman it's kind of a nerdy name a little bit, I think. Kind of like a nerd a little bit. It's not a cool name. It's a little bit old fashioned. It sounds old fashioned, okay? And so I think I was choosing names for the animals that sound kind of old fashioned because of course the narrator is Grandpa Gristle, and he's telling the story. He's old now, but he's telling the story about what happened many, many years ago when he was a baby, right? So at that time, maybe the names weren't old fashioned then, but now the names have become old fashioned. So that's the idea behind the choices I made for the animals' names, including Norman.
Okay.
Yeah, good
Thank you very much.
question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'm sorry. Maybe Shina-kun asked, Norman is kind of the ethnic group like Normandy or something. Is that right? No.
It's not, it does have that part of history, but in the story, in my mind and in the story, there's no connection really.
I see.
Right.
So just no, ordinary man's name.
It is, yes. It's an ordinary man's name. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Other questions? Anything? These are really good questions.
It's not a question, but
Okay.
but I'm not familiar with opossums.
Oh,
So
right.
yeah, and I didn't know they pleaded. I'm not sure how to
That's
to
right.
say,
Play
yeah.
dead. Right.
Pleaded, but yeah, in Japan, tanuki is very famous for doing the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know tanuki? Raccoon
Yeah.
dogs?
Yes, yes. Sometimes I actually see them near our house here.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I saw just maybe 1 week ago, there are some cats outside.
Mhm.
Oh, it's like the story I was telling about the cats and the food outside, because someone is taking care of some cats outside right next to our house. And there's some cat food outside. And a tanuki, a big fat tanuki, I saw it eating from the cat's bowl.
Wow.
Yeah. But it didn't play dead, it ran away.
Yeah. I see.
But
Yeah.
let me say something. I just put this in chat, but the spelling, even the name possum, sometimes it's opossum. So I think you'll see it either way. Don't be confused because it's actually both words are used.
I see. And I didn't expect such a bloody story.
Sorry.
So, yeah, my father, while he was driving in Akita Prefecture,
Yes.
he ran into a bear, real
Wow.
bear. Yeah.
Really?
And yeah, and he said he was shaking and he couldn't stop driving. So, and he hit the bear.
Wow.
Yeah, and the bumper of his car was broken, and it takes 12万円 to fix. So,
Wow, because he
well,
hit the bear? Was it a big
yeah,
bear?
big bear, so big bear.
Wow. Wow. Well,
So,
if you want to hear, I actually have a bear story too, because when I was younger, I worked in a summer camp in
mhm,
Massachusetts, okay, on
wow.
the East Coast.
Mhm,
And the bears, there were bears in the forest, but they
mhm,
would come for the food. They would like
yeah,
go into the dumpster and they would be
yeah.
digging in there trying to
Mhm,
get some food. So sometimes we did see bears. And one time I was staying in a cabin and I stepped out of the cabin and there was only a few, like 2 or 3 steps that go down to the ground, okay?
mhm,
And I opened the door and I stepped onto the first step and I look over into the trees because this is basically in the forest. And I look into the trees, it's very close, maybe 10 meters. It was really close. 10 meters, there was a big bear standing there looking at me. So we were looking at each other. I'm
mhm.
looking at the bear's looking at me, and I'm thinking, what do I do? And maybe the bear is thinking, what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
And of course, what I did was I went right back inside and I
Mhm,
closed the door. I wasn't going to
yeah.
go out. But
Mhm.
when I turned around, then the bear ran away. So he was scared too.
I see. Yeah, I used to live in the US and I used to go to Massachusetts.
Oh,
Yeah, because I like the atmosphere of New England. Yeah,
yes, it's beautiful.
yeah. So and I can imagine, yeah,
Yeah.
there are a lot of bears in the area.
Yeah. We have to be careful wherever there are bears.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you about
Yes,
the
of
story of
course, of
bear.
course. These are interesting stories. Um, Other questions or stories? Anything? Okay. Well, thank you for staying with me. Again, we're past time, but that's perfectly okay. I'm going to share my screen and we'll look ahead to next time, okay? So, okay. Okay, so the next session of the book club is on June 25th, 2 weeks from today. For homework, please read pages 52 to 65, okay? And as I said, that will be the end of the first part, all right, of the book. And again, well, if you don't have the copy for to read along, then please get a copy at Amazon or another bookseller. Again, you can watch all the videos. I will continue to post them at the book club board. You can offer any feedback or ask questions by making a comment at the book club board. And I wanted to thank everyone that has made comments there. It's really nice to it's doing something like this over Zoom is really not that easy. I would really prefer to do it in person. I know that's impossible, so Zoom is great, but it's not so easy to make more personal connections. And so that's one opportunity to connect with you guys personally. So I'm happy to see any comments and I'll be happy to respond. And then actually next week on June 18th, I am doing something different about vocabulary and animals. We've been talking about animals and I will do something fun related to vocabulary involving animals. And maybe, oh, I do have some stories because I promised that I was going to tell the story and show proof that I was bitten by a lion at one point in my life. And it's true story, it really is true. And I even have, I have proof of that. So I will show a picture and then you will see that it's a true story. So anyway, I have had some interesting experiences with animals. I can't say that being bitten by a lion was my favorite experience, but it is a true experience. And if you're curious, then please join me next Saturday and I will explain everything, okay, at that time. All right? Okay, well, it was great to see all of you again. Thank you for sticking with me. I know it's a long story, but there's there's a lot more to go, and we have many more sessions too. So I hope you can keep joining me from every 2 weeks, generally speaking. So anyway, the next time is June 25th, and I already posted the spaces for the 2 meetings in July, and soon I'll post the meetings for August as well, okay? So
Can I
again,
say something?
yes, please, go ahead.
Sorry, Aisha might have already told you about this, but
Okay.
we were thinking it would be great if we could have a event where we can translate your novel into Japanese. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, I heard about that and I think it's great. If you'd like to meet and have your own event, your own space where you can discuss and translate parts of the book, that's fine with me. I think that's wonderful if you'd like to do that. And so, and of course, you can use English or Japanese or both. Yeah, so I support that. And you can do that with the book. You can share the illustrations, in your space together, things like that. So don't feel that you have my complete permission to use the book in this way. Please use it freely. And if I can help in any way with that, then just let me know.
All right, thank you very much. So can I use this book club board to ask, community members if they would be interested in that
Oh,
kind of
yeah, that's a
event?
good idea. Yes, of course. Saki, that's a good idea.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I hope you guys have a great night and a good Sunday. And I might see you next Saturday or the Saturday after that. Okay. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye for
All right,
now.
thank you very much.
All right. Thank you too. Bye-bye.